Joining us to discuss this and much more, including the war on law enforcement, is investigative reporter Michelle Malkin. She's the host of Michelle Malkin Investigates, and her new book, due out in September, is called Open Borders, Inc. Who's Funding America's Destruction? Michelle, thanks for being here. Great to see you. And can't wait to get a copy of the new book.
Thank you, John.
All right, so when the administration first announced this rule, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi deemed it a, quote, hateful and bigoted assault on our nation's proud heritage. She also said it's a clear attempt to demonize and terrorize the newcomers who make America more American. What's your take on this rule, Michelle?
Nancy Pelosi is ignorant of history. You can go back all the way to the 17th century, and the principle that foreigners who come to a sovereign nation should not become public charges has been embedded in English common law, and it's been something that's part of immigration law in the United States for centuries. And so what you have essentially are open borders zealots who've completely turned our history on its head for the pursuit of cheap votes and cheap labor. That's something, obviously, that your viewers are very well aware of. Sure. I think that this is an incredibly smart move on the part of our president because, again, it shows the true colors of the Democrat Party. I mean, they will fall all over themselves and crawl over broken glass to represent foreigners who are not able to show that they can support themselves over law-abiding American citizens in so many of the major cities of this country that are suffering. And where are the priorities at the Democrat Party? With every last illegal alien or legal immigrant who refuses to abide by these kinds of rules that have been on the books for hundreds and hundreds of years.
And just recently, immigration czar Ken Cuccinelli pointed out that the public charge law has existed, as you talked about, for a long time. It's just now being enforced. Here is Cuccinelli.
Nancy Pelosi referred to America's proud heritage. Yeah. Self-sufficiency is a central part of America's proud heritage, and we proudly stand behind that tradition and enforce the 1996 law passed on a wildly bipartisan basis and signed by Bill Clinton. This rule is well within the law. I'm very confident that we'll prevail in those lawsuits.
And you know, to underscore your point there, Democrats are all up in arms about this now, but why? Because Bill Clinton signed it into law back in 1996. I guess that style of Democratic rule is not in vogue anymore, Michelle.
Right. It's because they hate Trump and they actually have no principles that are wedded to the idea of American sovereignty. My own parents had to prove not only that they were self-sufficient, but that they were English proficient and that they were going to offer some skills to this country that didn't already exist. On my husband's side, whose family comes from a line of Ukrainian Jews, they came over on something called the Red Star Line, landed at Ellis Island, could not sufficiently prove that they wouldn't be public charges, had to go back home and then come back again. So the idea that we've been this open borders nation and that Emma Lazarus somehow wrote the Declaration of Independence and is somehow the founding mother of this country is absolutely absurd. So I applaud both Ken Cuccinelli and Stephen Miller, very forceful voices for immigration enforcement, pushing back against one of the biggest myths of the Open Borders, Inc., which is the idea that Emma Lazarus should rule how we decide who gets into this country.
Right, and if Democrats don't like an executive order by the president, they can always pass a law, which is what Congress is supposed to do, and they've refused to do for decades. All right, let's talk about more about the 8-hour standoff yesterday in Philadelphia with this gunman. The suspect is a 36-year-old with a history of gun convictions. He could and should go to prison for the rest of his life. Police were called to the area to carry out a drug warrant there, and this man opened fire. Meanwhile, the U.S. attorney in Philadelphia is being called out, a guy named Larry Krasner, for promoting a, quote, culture of disrespect for law enforcement. That's coming from President Trump's U.S. attorney in Philadelphia. He says that culture contributed to yesterday's shooting. And also, Michelle, a reporter from CBS affiliate pointed this out yesterday, and I'm quoting her tweet here. A major moment of disappointment this evening was watching a crowd of people taunt officers, laughing and yelling at them in the midst of this gunfire. You see the reporter on the screen right now. She later said, I should add 98% of the people on the scene were respectful and concerned. That moment was just such a startling thing to see in the middle of something so chaotic. Michelle, how do we get to a point where police responding to a community that they're trying to protect are being heckled by the same people in that community. They're running towards gunfire, and they are being heckled by members of that community.
John, it's a great question, and in a sense, I answered it with the most recent episode of Michelle Malkin Investigates that Newsmax aired on the history of Assata Shakur, which really talks about this Anticop virus that has been festering for decades now, whether it was the Black Liberation Army, the Weather Underground in the 70s, the Anticop animus that has metastasized in Hollywood and academia, and certainly Larry Krasner, who is a very far-left district attorney in Philadelphia, has helped facilitate that attitude and that environment. But it's not unique to Philadelphia. In the last couple of weeks this summer, we've seen viral videos in New York City of rookie cops from the NYPD having water bottles and noodles pelted
and Michelle,
at them
we have that video right now. We'll go ahead and put it up. This is the latest incident from the Bronx. Officers there responding to break up a fight. Somebody pelted them with Chinese food. And they're seeing that on the screen right now. I mean, I don't know how you have to have respect for these officers going into these communities knowing, you know, this is assault, clear and simple. If it happened to you or me, there would be criminal charges. But these people are given just summons to appear in court, a slap on the wrist. And also, Michelle, as we look at this in a broader thing, you know, we had this attack on the facility in San Antonio, on the ICE facility. The FBI is calling for the public's health there. You know, where does this stop?
Well, I think that we have to be very concerned that this will end in blood. When you combine this festering anti-cop attitude that's in so many of our inner cities with the increasing violent incitement against our ICE officers and Border Patrol agents, where you have people on social media who are freely inciting violence and doxing ICE agents and their families, people have to stand up. I mean, there are these kinds of protests that are funded by the likes of Soros and left-wing billionaires, which I go into great detail in Open Borders, Inc. But you don't see any counter protests. Where are the hashtag Stand With ICE counter demonstrators at these facilities to show their support for the men and women in uniform who are on the front lines defending American sovereignty?
Yeah, it's a dangerous position for Democrats to be in when they're calling for the dissolving ICE while this type of violence is taking place against law enforcement. I would not want to be in that position. Michelle, great to see you as always. A reminder to everyone to go ahead and pre-order Michelle's new book called Open Borders, Inc. It'll be out September 20th, but don't wait. Get it now. Again, Open Borders, Inc., Who is Funding America's Destruction, due out in September. Great to see you, Michelle. And also a reminder to everyone, make sure you tune in this weekend. Newsmax TV is airing Michelle Malkin Investigates. You can catch the latest episode, a look at the Muslim refugee rape epidemic, which she takes a look at this problem plaguing the streets of Germany and Europe. It'll air at 6 p.m. on Saturday, and 7 p.m. on Sunday, and again at 10 p.m. on Tuesday. Michelle, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing news channel, now in 65 million homes. Get Newsmax TV on all the major cable systems or go to newsmaxtv.com and click on the Find Newsmax tab to locate us. Remember, Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.